make. And on the other hand, you have the green consumers who are applauding the changes that are being made. And so they're trying to balance this between the two, and they're trying to do the right thing, but maybe it's seen as greenwashing. And on the other hand, they've got the cynics that are annoyed with them and will be going to their competitors that do provide plastic bags. So in a way, I think the legislation is a blessing in disguise, because that will basically take the power out of their hands and say, well, this is the way it's going to be. Now the consumers will have to just deal with it.
And we've already seen backtracking from some of the supermarkets in Australia. But if the government does the banning, Mike, they risk a backlash, because people arguably all say they're on the board with this, but there must be a few who secretly find plastic bags extremely useful. So this will be going on in the minds of the politicians too, I imagine.
Absolutely, and so it becomes a popularity contest, doesn't it? But I guess at the end of the day, there are three levels to look at this. There's the macro level, which is what's best for the environment and the world, and can we make a difference? And the answer to that is obviously whatever difference we make will have an effect, because we put plastic here in the first place, right? And then the next level down is, even if I make a change, will the recycling systems, will the retailers, will the companies do what we need them to do? Do I really trust that business is doing this for the right reasons rather than greenwashing? And then at that micro level, it's whether the consumers believe that they can make the change themselves. And if you look at any of the comments that people put on these sorts of stories, you get the entire gamut of cynicism from, I can't be bothered, all the way through to it doesn't matter, all the way through to good on you, countdown for doing this and all that sort of stuff. So it's a huge melting pot of different opinions. And the other thing is, people within themselves will change on a day-to-day basis. None of us are perfect. And so when we get stressed or when we're tired or looking for convenience, then the plastic bag becomes a best friend. But, on the other hand, if we're feeling pretty good, pretty environmentally friendly, and we're trying to be role models to our kids or preserve the environment for our grandchildren, and then all of a sudden we despise plastic bags and give everyone else the look of shame when they ask for it in front of us at the till.
Now, You're Mike, a good student of human nature.
Can I ask you about that? Because that's the bit that I think is really going to change people's behaviour, is that shame. The number of times I've gone to the supermarket and forgotten my bags, and my God, I've got a lot of them. These are non-plastic ones. And I've actually had to get plastic. And I almost shrink as she says, would you like bags? And I go, I'll have 5 or 6, please. And I'm really, really embarrassed by it. And I've seen and heard others around me as well. So is it that sense of shame and disgust with oneself that's going to be the real thing that changes the way we behave with plastic?
Leave them in the boot of the car, Ellie.
This social license to operate, even amongst individual consumers, is a massive, bringer of change. You notice this with, maybe cigarettes are a good example. A few decades ago, nobody looked twice, and now if you're, having a smoke somewhere, people cast you dirty looks and all that sort of stuff. And so you feel, slightly embarrassed, a bit like you're the odd one out, and what you're doing is wrong. And so therefore, that is a huge, it's almost like peer pressure in favor of the environment in a way.
Yeah. Good to talk with you, Mike. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
We won't get to the victory snatched from the jaws. Actually, the gullet, the very esophagus of defeat this morning in Russia. Belgium versus Japan.
Japan, yeah.
My apologies to Emil, who's standing by with a very entertaining narrative. But
sorry, Emil.
Sorry, Emil.
Yeah, Ellie went on too long.
Yeah, I did, sorry.
Peter Elliott, no, you were fine, Ellie. Ellie Jones on the panel. In fact, you were both splendid. So look forward to seeing you two again, and thank you very much for your company, everybody.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks.
Cheers. Checkpoint follows.
Tōtu mārau hoa mā he kōrero kei te haere hei kaupapa kei te karawhiua. Tonight on Checkpoint, a solo mother of 2 tells us she's been left broken despite winning an 8.5-year battle with the Ministry of Social Development. We have the details. Also tonight, they've waited almost 10 days to be rescued. Now 13 junior members of his high soccer team could face months in a cave as authorities work out how to get them out. A 21-year-old nanny who faked a pregnancy and kidnapped a baby is sentenced to 3 years in prison. We visit a soup kitchen that's also an open mic talent quest because poverty is too tough to stand silent and alone. Nurses say the vote over the latest pay offer will be close, and a World Cup qualifier between Australia and the Philippines becomes a game of basket brawl.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora. Good afternoon. Ko Katrina Batt and tēnei. A High Court ruling in favour of a solo mother over what legally constitutes income could have a wide-reaching impact. The woman has won her 8.5-year fight with the Ministry of Social Development, which had unlawfully tried to argue bank loans and credit cards were income. Catherine Hutton reports.
The ministry was trying to recover more than $100,000 from the woman, who has name suppression, claiming it overpaid her while she was receiving a benefit between 2005 and 2010 because she borrowed money from her mother, a finance company and the bank to stay afloat. But Justice Paul Davison has ruled the ministry was wrong to classify those sources of money as income because the money had to be repaid. The ministry says it is studying the court's decision and considering its response. This is Catherine Hutton.
The nurses' organisation is playing down any sign of a split over possible strike action next week, saying debate is healthy. More than 29,000 nurses and midwives began voting online today on a new offer from their District Health Board employers in a bid to settle a protracted wrangle over pay and conditions in hospitals. It coincides with debate among many nurses, including on social media, about whether it's enough to ease their concerns about pay and staffing. The union spokesperson, Payne, says debate is healthy.
People make all sorts of comments. The important thing is that there's some healthy and honest debate, and that debate needs to be respectful and continue to happen between members as members seek to understand the offer.
Payne won't predict what the outcome of the vote may be. It'll be announced on Tuesday. The acting Prime Minister says Australia should remember its international commitments on the treatment of children as it holds a 17-year-old New Zealander in detention. Winston Peters says New Zealand has already raised its concerns and will continue to do so. Here's our political editor Jane Patterson.
Mr Peters says Australia's detention of the 17-year-old in an adult deportation centre ignores United Nations agreements. The teenager's been held in Melbourne since March, awaiting a deportation hearing this month, reportedly over non-violent offending. Mr Peters says New Zealand and Australia are joint signatories to UN conventions relating to the treatment of children. He says the teenager is regarded as a child or a minor, and Australia should live up to its commitments. Mr Peters says he'll raise it with the Australian Foreign Minister Julie Bishop when he meets with her next month. From Parliament, Jane Patterson.
The Thai Army says the boys trapped in a Thai cave will have to learn to dive or wait months for flooding to recede. Navy divers found the 12 boys and their football coach perched on a ledge surrounded by floodwaters about 10 kilometres inside the Tham Luang cave. They'd been missing for 9 days. Reuters journalist Panu Wongcha says the Army is making plans to send in food to last at least 4 months and provide diving training for the boys while continuing to drain water out of the cave.
It is ultimately up to the SEAL divers to be the judge to see whether it is safe or not to bring those people out of the cave. The water level will be the main factor that will provide the SEAL with this decision of taking the people out.
Reuters journalist Panu Wongcha some food and medical supplies have now reached the boys, who were found emaciated and hungry. A Northland share milker who was secretly filmed bashing his cows has lost his job and his home. Footage of the man hitting the animals on the legs with a metal bar went viral last week when the animal rights group Farm Watch released the video to MPI and news media. The Northland Rural Support Trust says the man is no longer employed at the Mangapai farm and has had to move out of the house that went with his contract. The coordinator, Julie Yonker, says both the share milker and the farmer are being trolled mercilessly on social media, and she believes that's unfair. She says the man is essentially a good person who's made a big mistake, and he's acknowledged that and expressed remorse. A former secondary school student has been banned from all rugby for 4 years after admitting a breach of New Zealand Rugby's anti-doping rules while still at college. The student was found to have purchased and used clenbuterol in 2014. The Judicial Committee believes the player knew the risks and understood that the anabolic agent was banned from sport. This case is part of a bigger investigation, and Drug Free Sport New Zealand Chief Executive Nick Patterson says more needs to be done to educate young aspiring athletes.
We know there are increasing pressures on the youth of today compared to previous generations, but I guess every generation would argue that. Certainly in sport, there are greater rewards at younger levels, but we also know the good work that's happening in the schools and actually within the Super Rugby franchises, for instance, in educating our young athletes. And we've just got to keep it going.
Nick Patterson from Drug Free Sport New Zealand. It's 5 minutes past 5. Sport, the England footballers will be hoping their last 16 World Cup match against Colombia doesn't come down to penalties. England doesn't have a great record when a knockout game is decided from the spot, having lost 3 World Cup and 3 European Championship games that way. However, Ashley Young, who's missed a penalty in England's 2012 European Championship loss to Italy, isn't shying away from putting up his hand should it come down to penalties again.
I've got the confidence in my own ability to step up and take one. If it goes to them stages there, I'll definitely be one to put my hand up and want to take one. Obviously, we've worked and I've practiced them, and I've got confidence in my own ability to be able to score one.
Sweden play Switzerland in the other game tomorrow morning. The New Zealand women's hockey players are excited at the prospect of playing at what's being touted as the biggest women's sporting event in Britain when the World Cup starts in London later this month. The Black Sticks will be one of 16 teams vying for the title of world champions, and captain Stacey Michelson is confident of playing in front of such large crowds will bring out the best in her side.
It's fantastic on the world stage when you get to play overseas and in countries where hockey is really important, and particularly for women it's so exciting. We know that it'll be a little bit difficult at times playing in front of big crowds, but it's certainly something that we're also looking forward to.
Stacey Michelson. And the 46-year-old Australian surfing legend Kelly Slater has announced he'll retire after next year's World Tour. That's the news.
9 days in a flooded cave.
A happy ending that had seemed increasingly hard to believe in.
Winston Peters strikes back.
And to say that somehow the selection of a neutral, independent person devoid of politics means it's somehow contaminated is unadulterated balderdash.
And a kayaker crosses the Tasman, but with company.
The shark. He's just a frisky little bugger. He was just bored, I think. Yeah, friendly with teeth.
Interviews with Bite. Morning Report with Guy Espiner and Susie Ferguson. Weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, cases of head and neck cancer are increasing at a faster rate than other cancers, yet a cure for one of the causes is being refused. We ask why. And after 10, alone in the Tasman, yachty Tony Allen on his incredible 20 days lost at sea. Join me, Lynn Freeman, and for Catherine Ryan after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and Taupo, mainly fine. Waikato to Kapiti Coast, including Taumaranui and Taihape, fine, but cloud increasing tomorrow morning. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, a few showers becoming confined to Gisborne and northern Hawke's Bay this evening, fine spells increasing elsewhere. Wellington, Nelson and Marlborough, a few showers in Wellington, clearing this evening, otherwise fine. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, fine, a few light showers developing tonight, then turning to rain in Fiordland tomorrow morning. Canterbury and Otago, mainly fine but high cloud increasing tomorrow and isolated showers developing in Otago. The Southland fine today but rain developing about the coast tomorrow morning and scattered rain developing inland in the afternoon, and the Chatham Islands cloudy periods with a few showers. It's 8 minutes past 5 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina, and nice to have you back.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for being with us. Thailand and the kids in the cave story shortly. Alive and well, wonderfully, but perhaps still a long way from being out. We're going there live tonight, all of that coming up. But we're going to begin tonight with the story of a solo mother of 2 children who says she's been broken mentally and physically by the Ministry for Social Development, which took her to the High Court arguing that a bank loan and a credit card should be classed as income. The woman, who has name suppression and can only be identified as Ms. F, went into debt to her bank, a finance company and her mother while she was on a benefit between 2005 and 2010. She says the debt was to make ends meet. But the Ministry of Social Development, upon finding out about those debts, classed them as income. Even though they were loans, MSD said Ms. F had to pay all the money back, more than $100,000 in total, because it believed she was overpaid her benefit. What followed, Ms. F says, was 8.5 years of hell until today. Finally, after 2 appeals, the High Court ruled in her favour: loans are not income. Here's Zach Fleming with Ms F's story. We've distorted her voice to protect her identity.
This process broke me on many, many levels, and really negatively impacted me and my children, my family's life. Besides obviously being under the strain of it, I'd already been dealing with an abusive relationship for many years, and was just trying to do my best to keep my head above water with my kids and being a single parent and dealing with constant, harassment and issues by my ex-partner. And the winds just took that abuse to a whole nother level, and no matter what I did, I was met with this sort of tyrannical giant, and that just crushed me. There's only so long that you can keep fighting, and even though I had this sort of strong will and impetus to find out why they could even say I had earned income when I haven't, why this was happening to me, even though that was there, it broke me.
Both mentally and physically. It was an 8.5-year battle against the Ministry of Social Development, or what she calls
a Goliath who had no interest in listening to me.
The ministry argued that bank loans, credit cards and loans from family constituted income. It said it overpaid Miss F, a solo mother of 2 on the benefit, by nearly $110,000 between 2005 and 2010 because she borrowed from her mother, a finance company and the bank to stay afloat.
No one can make ends meet on the benefit, especially when they have high living costs.
It started at the Benefits Review Committee, then it went to the Social Security Appeal Authority, which said bank loans weren't income, but family loans were. So MSD took it to the High Court, where they met a bewildered Frances Joychild QC.
To argue that bank loans, which clearly are documented and have to be repaid and are repaid, they were income as well. And if anyone had access to a bank loan, they shouldn't be accessing a benefit, which I thought was completely nonsensical, because you have to repay loans. You have to repay credit card and bank loans regularly.
Which is exactly what the judge said, right? He cited in very plain language that a bank loan is not income because you have to pay it back.
That's right. And what were they going to pay it back with if they didn't have a benefit? It just defied common sense, to tell you the truth.
Justice Paul Davison, in his judgment today, very plainly said loans and credit cards are not income because you have to pay them back. It's likely to have a wide-reaching impact, as Miss F is not the only beneficiary MSD has chased for money, arguing loans are income.
MSD needs to review all its debts that it's established against beneficiaries. I'm aware of at least one prosecution happening of a person because he didn't declare a loan. His lawyer contacted me.
Lawyer Catriona McLennan has a similar demand. She wants Minister for Social Development Carmel Sepuloni
to either withdraw all the cases MSD has got in the High Court at the moment, pursuing beneficiaries for debts, or else to put them on hold while they have a thorough review of them. We don't know how widespread this problem is.
And the hope is that this case will not just have an impact now, but that it'll limit future cases. That's what Miss F says pushed her to fight for 8.5 years.
All of the other people who might not have had the will or the time or the understanding or the education or the resources or the energy to be able to question decisions, policies and practices.
But now that she's won, the question Frances Joychild says we should be asking is, should a solo mother of 2 have had to fight the Ministry of Social Development all the way to the High Court?
If they want to make a law change, they should do it through Parliament, not drag this woman through any more court cases. They always had that option of just changing the law and letting the people, Parliament, decide whether they wanted to make loans income for social security purposes, and I'm sure they would not have had any chance of getting it through.
MSD declined to be interviewed today, only saying it's studying the decision and considering its response. Miss F has lost faith in it to such an extent that she's almost convinced it will appeal.
I'm sure that they will go kicking and screaming. And I guess for me, I know that it's not the end of the road. So it's a little bit why this decision is challenging, because I suspect I'll probably have to go through more.
You primarily want change. Would you also like an apology? Would that mean anything to you at this point?
I would love to somehow add up the cost to myself and my family and have that returned to me. I don't think that's possible. But I would love to have an acknowledgement of the impact, the negative effect this has had upon my life, and an apology and some form of resolution that goes beyond just me, that means that this will never happen again to anyone else.
For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
And we would love to hear from anyone who has been told by MSD or its officers that a repayable loan is income. Please text us 2101 or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. If that is you or you know of someone that has had that experience, please be in touch. It's 16 minutes past 5. We're going to turn now to the almost miraculous news from deep inside a dark and twisting cave in Thailand, where 12 boys and their soccer coach have been found alive almost 10 days after they went missing. British Navy divers found the team huddled on a rock above floodwaters inside the cave system, more than 2k underground. Aged between 11 and 16, the boys had visited the cave after soccer practice on June 23rd. Finding them was a triumph. Getting them out will be the sequel. Bridget Burke reports.
Jubilation as Chiang Rai Governor Narongsak Osotanakorn broke the news the world had waited 9 days to hear. 12 members of the wild boar sports team, aged between 11 and 16, and their 25-year-old coach, missing inside the Tham Luang cave, had been found alive.
How many of you? 13. Brilliant.
This is the moment British rescuers find the missing boys with a spotlight. They're barefoot and have been sitting in pitch darkness for almost 10 days. The group sits huddled high on a piece of rock in a dry room 2.3 kilometres inside the cave.
We are coming. It's okay. It's okay. Many people are coming. Many people. We are the first. Many people come. What day? Tomorrow. No. What day is it? Monday. Okay, but 1 week and Monday. You have been here 10 days. 10 days. You are very strong.
The boys ask for more light and the divers take photos to show family members keeping vigil outside. The divers promise the relieved group they'll return as soon as possible with food and a medical team. The boys appear weak but in good spirits and tell rescuers they are hungry and have been drinking water dripping from the cave walls to survive.
We are happy too.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay.
The search had been an international effort involving over 1,000 personnel, with divers describing the layout as an underground labyrinth. The cave runs for 10 kilometres beneath a forest park near the Thai border with Myanmar. Progress had been slow as parts of a narrow 100-metre stretch had to be widened when air cylinders became jammed. It's also monsoon season. Rising waters and thick mud inside the cave hampered the Navy SEAL search over the past week. Outside, the mother of missing boy A Kai Waibun Runryung said she couldn't wait to hug her son. Today is the best day, she says. I have been waiting for my son for so many days. I thought he only had a 50% chance of survival. But just when she will be reunited with her son is unknown. The rescue is precarious and is expected to be slow. None of the team can swim or dive, so thousands of gallons of water will need to be pumped from the cave before they can leave. More rain is expected this week. It could be months before the team see daylight again. For Checkpoint, Bridget Burke.
Yes, it really is extraordinary how long it may take to get the 13 out. Later in the program, we're going to cross live up to the caves where CNN's correspondent Anna Corrin is. She'll talk to us after the news at 6 with the latest about what the rescue plans are. 5:20. Nadine Manukau Tongiavalu held her cousin as he bled to death on a street in Grey Lynn. Less than 3 years later, she had faked a pregnancy, falsified documents to get a job as a nanny and kidnapped her baby. A baby she was trusted to look after. Today, Manukau Tongiavalu was sentenced to 3 years in prison after pleading guilty to charges of kidnapping, dishonestly using a document, burglary, making an intimate visual recording and a criminal nuisance. Our Auckland reporter Edward Gay filed this report, and just a note, if you're watching, you'll be able to see the CCTV footage released by the family of the kidnapping.
He was walking towards me with his hands over his throat, and then I said to him, "Cuz, are you okay?" And he was like, "Yep." And then we walked back to where the fight had originally started, and then Luke fell to the ground. Then heaps of blood started.
That was Nadine Manukau Tongiavalu giving evidence at the High Court in Auckland in 2015 when 17-year-old Vincent Skeen was on trial for the murder of her cousin Luke Tipene. Skeen was eventually jailed for manslaughter. Today, the court heard how the killing and subsequent court case had a lasting effect on Manukau Tongiavalu. The 21-year-old's lawyer, Panama Le'auane, posed this question.
What was going on in Nadine's mind when she weaved this web of deception?
Mr Le'auane said Manukau Tongiavalu was blamed by some for the death of Luke Tipene and suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. After a relationship soured, Manukau Tongiavalu posted naked photos of the man and harassed him online. Amid this background, Manukau Tongiavalu faked a pregnancy. She wore a baby belly, held a baby shower, and later falsified documents to get a job as a nanny. The parents she worked for told the court today that it took years and several rounds of IVF for them to conceive. The mother, who can't be named, said in her victim impact statement the pregnancy had been difficult and her daughter was eventually born by emergency C-section. She had little family support and there were also feeding issues.
Nadine knew all of this. I had shared this very personal information with her. She knew how precious was to me and to us and what she meant to me, which makes it all the more disturbing and upsetting.
She said the kidnapping was an absolute violation of trust.
We welcomed Nadine into our home, thinking she would be kind, caring and honest. Instead, she had prepared a suite of extremely detailed, articulate and elaborate lies. It's disturbing to know that Nadine had been planning this for many months, looking for a family to target.
The father said Manukau Tongiavalu woke him to tell him the house had been robbed. He went to his daughter's cot to find she'd gone. The father said he and his wife panicked, not knowing where their daughter was. Later, he reviewed the CCTV footage captured on his home security system that showed a balaclava-clad woman coming in the back door and leaving with his daughter.
I believe that Nadine coordinated the whole event in detail with meticulous planning and preparation. She appeared to do this in the most cold, calculating, malicious, manipulative and unscrupulous manner by taking advantage of a family that was in an incredibly vulnerable situation.
The mother said Manukau Tongiavalu kept up the charade.
While waiting with me in my distressed state in the police car, Nadine was very calm and very quiet. I believe she has no remorse and is a callous and calculating individual who has deceived and hurt many, many people in her path.
The woman caught on CCTV cameras was Manukau Tongiavalu's cousin, Sydney Tulapapa. Tulapapa was discharged without conviction, but in a rare move, the Solicitor General is appealing that decision. At Tulapapa's sentencing, it was revealed Manukau Tongiavalu had told her that the baby was hers and that she'd put her up for adoption and now wanted her back. The baby was returned safe and well later that afternoon. In sentencing, Judge Nicola Mathers took time off for Manukau Tongiavalu's mental health issues and her early guilty plea.
This court, indeed any court in New Zealand, will not tolerate this type of offending. Not only have you offended in relation to the kidnapping, but your other actions, again over a significant period, have tormented a young man whose family took you into their home.
Manukau Tongiavalu told the court her time in prison awaiting sentence has been the best thing that's happened to her. Judge Mathers read this excerpt from her letter.
You say today you have heard from people that do not believe I deserve a second chance, and I don't blame them. However, I am here to plead with you to see past my mistakes and focus on the positive changes that have come from this incarceration. Sorry is truly not enough to prove how remorseful I am.
Manukau Tongiavalu has spent 11 months in custody. In a month's time, she will have served the minimum 1/3 of her sentence and be eligible for parole. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Edward Gayahau.
5:25. Many nurses say they are still upset about paying conditions and may vote against a proposed new pay deal. Nurses began voting on the new offer today, with the result expected next Tuesday, a week today. Whether it will get the thumbs up isn't clear, however, with many nurses far from happy. But as our health correspondent Karen Brown reports, the nurses' organisation is playing down any sign of a split over possible strike action next week, saying debate is healthy.
Nurses approached by RNZ would only speak anonymously, given the rising tension around what could be the first nationwide nurses' strike in decades. One, a senior emergency department registered nurse, whom we've agreed to call Julie, is currently at step 5 on the RN scale, earning a full-time equivalent annual salary of $66,755. She says under the proposed deal it could rise to $77,386 in 2020 if she reaches step 7, but she's got a postgraduate diploma and it would still be below an equivalent teacher's pay. She adds under the new offer she'll have to wait another 8 months for the rise that was part of an earlier offer.
So that puts me even, worse off really, and there's no more money, and we're already saying we're so far behind. An equal level of teacher of my degree worth in years experience is already sort of sitting at around 78,000, and they're sort of trying for another pay rise as well.
Julie says a further commitment from DHBs in the new offer unveiled yesterday to begin immediately recruiting an extra 500 full-time staff to address workforce pressures also doesn't appear to stack up. She says staffing pressures are massive and of major concern to nurses.
I worked a shift the other week where I was in charge with one other nurse of 25 patients. That's not safe. It's not safe for them and it's not safe for me. It also puts my registration at risk.
Julie says she expects the vote will be close, but she herself wants the deal rejected. Elsewhere, a medical nurse in the Bay of Plenty, whom we'll call Gladys, says many nurses she knows are unhappy about the way the bargaining process has been run by the nurses' organisation. She adds the union's recommendation that members accept the latest DHB offer isn't appropriate.
It feels like we've been trialled in the media before we've had a chance to actually sit down and look at the offer and make those decisions for ourselves.
The nurses' organisation spokesperson C. Payne says that was a decision for the negotiating team.
That is, I think, based on their views that there is, and I've said this before, I think, in the media, that there wasn't likely to be any further money.
She's not worried about any signs, including on social media, of dissension among nurses.
People make all sorts of comments. The important thing is that there's some healthy and honest debate, and that debate needs to be respectful and continue to happen between members as members seek to understand the offer.
Gladys, meanwhile, agrees the vote will be close, but says many nurses are very annoyed and may want to show it.
The whole health sector has been underfunded, staffing issues have been ignored, and nurses have always stepped back from it. But I think this time they do have the strength, and they will continue to have the strength, to voice their concerns.
The outcome of the strike vote will be announced next Tuesday. DHBs declined to comment. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Karen Brown tēnei.
That's nurses who are voting. After 6 o'clock tonight, the NZEI are going to join us live to tell us if teachers have decided to strike. We will be able to tell you that. after 6. So that is coming up. Lots of feedback coming in on the MSD. All of it, I think, outraged by the story we began the program with just after 5 tonight. So pleased to hear of the judgment that loans are not income. Hard to believe MSD has chased solo parents down on the spurious grounds that loans are income. Outrageous, says Deborah, echoing what many of you are saying. Read the woman who was told by MSD that her bank loans were income approximately 12 years ago. Whilst on a benefit, I needed to borrow money for home maintenance. I was told by Wins they could only lend me money if I was unable to borrow it from my bank. It seems they are hypocrites, says somebody signing themselves ex-beneficiary. Thank you for your feedback. A lot of it coming in. Coming up on the program, will the teachers strike? We've said we're going to tell you that. We'll know in about 45 minutes. I think a World Cup basketball qualifier between Australia and the Philippines becomes an all-in basket brawl. And Claire Easton Farrelly, our brilliant camerawoman, and I were in Otara last night, where the Otara Music's Arts Centre, OMAC, combined a soup kitchen with an open mic talent night, because poverty is tough enough without being silent and alone. It's a pretty moving story, and that's coming up before 6. We'd love your feedback on anything that we're covering. Text us 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. You can email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz, or you can Facebook, or you can just get in touch using a pigeon if you want.
Do people send letters anymore?
Yes, they do. They do, usually to complain about my language. Yeah. They arrive 3 days after the fact.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're still using that.
Katrina has headlines.
I do.
Yeah, yay.
And it's only a minute late. A lawyer is calling for a full review of all beneficiaries accused of fraud by the Ministry of Social Development after the High Court ruled it had been wrongly interpreting what constitutes income. The ministry was trying to recover $100,000 from a solo mother, claiming it overpaid her while she was earning a benefit because she borrowed from her mother, a finance company and the bank to stay afloat. The nurses' organisation says debate among its members over next week's possible strike action is healthy. Today, 29,000 nurses and midwives have begun voting on a new offer from district health boards as they try to settle a long dispute over pay and conditions. The results will be announced on Tuesday next week. A woman who was jailed today for kidnapping a baby was involved in the trial of her cousin's killer 3 years earlier and suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Nadine Manako Tongavalu was sentenced to 3 years after faking documents to get a nanny position before kidnapping the 11-day-old baby the family had trusted her to look after. Excuse me, I got a coughing fit again at these bulletins. The Northland share milker who was secretly filmed hitting cows with a metal bar has lost his job and his home. The Northland Rural Support Trust says both the share milker and the farmer he worked for are being trolled mercilessly on social media, and she believes that's unfair. She says the man is essentially a good person who's made a big mistake, and he has acknowledged that and expressed his remorse. The former secondary school student has been banned from rugby for 4 years after admitting a breach of New Zealand rugby's anti-doping rules. The student was found to have bought and used clenbuterol in 2014. The Judicial Committee says the player knew the risks and understood that the anabolic agent was banned from sport. Drug-Free Sport Chief Executive Nick Patterson says more needs to be done to educate young athletes. And the police are investigating the discovery of a woman's body at a house in the Vin yesterday. The death is being treated as unexplained. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6.
Thanks, Katrina. That was heroic. Continuing. It sounded like Torval and Dean were dancing on the back of your throat. Yeah, not easy when you're doing live news and you have a coughing fit. Thank you, Katrina. We appreciate you continuing. Let's go to Wellington now. Business news with Patrick O'Mara. Patrick, it's lovely. You're looking very smart. Patrick, just what the world needed, just another survey. I'm starting to get survey ennui, and this one has confirmed a continuing decline in business. Is it time for the government to worry?
Yeah, John, it's very interesting, isn't it? The winter of discontent, as I'm sure you remember back in 2000, it's been compared to on business confidence. Yes, another survey, another one on business confidence, this time from the Institute of Economic Research. It's found that a net 19% of firms expect economic conditions to deteriorate in the coming months. That's its lowest level in 7 years. The firms themselves, which is a better indicator of how well the economy is going to go, firms' own prospects have fallen to 5-year lows. A bit more positive, but still it's fallen to 5-year lows. And What we're seeing now is that slightly softer demand that was experienced in the June quarter, plus the fact that firms are now saying they're facing rising costs, which they can't necessarily pass on to consumers, is undermining their profitability. And probably the thing to worry about here is that they're saying that it's actually making them pull back on their investments and intentions. Not necessarily on hiring, that's still growing for now, but investment intentions are down. And I guess it's pointing towards slower growth in the second half of the year. Now, I guess the question we're all asking is, how much is the Labour government responsible for this? And there's certainly, there's no doubt that the measures that they're talking about bringing in, certainly around employment laws, making it easier for people to bargain collectively, the oil and gas decision, which caught particularly Taranaki out, these sort of things have made firms uneasy, and it is coming through in these business confidence surveys. Now the question is, how much does business confidence actually then translate into actual changes in activity?
Yeah.
And of course back in, and I'm sure you remember, John, with the last Labour government, business confidence actually was down for most of their tenure, the 9 years they were in power. But the economy powered along at 3.2% growth. So they may not have been happy with the government, but it certainly didn't stop them getting out there and doing what they needed to do. In fact, even better than when National was in power, when there was very positive economic confidence, but growth was not quite as strong, admittedly hit by the global financial crisis and, of course, those devastating earthquakes in Christchurch.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? It is. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Is confidence, do they become self-fulfilling? Ultimately, these surveys, only one way of finding out, and it's to keep an eye on them. Really interesting to see what happened in Asia. I was a bit caught out by a really big slump in the Hang Seng. What's going on up there? 3% off in a day, Patrick?
Yeah, indeed. So this is Hong Kong's main stock market index, but not just them. What we saw is that in the region there is investors are definitely skittish. And we saw the Shanghai Composite, that was down 2% so far this morning. We've seen the Nikkei index, that's Japan's main index, that's down as well at 3-month lows. And look, it's all to do with the looming trade war between China and the US. That's, in fact, this deadline is coming on Saturday. This is when President Donald Trump says that he's going to bring in these tariffs on $34 billion worth of Chinese goods. And that ranges right across the gamut from industrial goods, consumer goods, agricultural products. And China has threatened to retaliate in kind with a $34 billion of their own against American goods. And there certainly is no sign that either side is backing down. We even heard from the Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, saying that even with these gyrations on the markets, because investors do worry about the growth impact of this, Wilbur Ross is saying this administration doesn't care. They're not so worried about what the stock market does. They say that this is the right thing to do because China, they say, has been ripping them off and they're practicing unfair trade. Of course, China denies that, and they themselves are saying that, well, if you want to trade, well, we're prepared to step up. Now, in fact, the problem with this is it's not just stopping there. Trump has also brought the European Union into this. He said that he's also complained that about their unfair practices, is what he said. And of course, he's in a stoush too with Canada and Mexico, particularly over the steel and aluminium tariffs, which are already in place. So overall, the concern is that, look, if these things come to pass, it could quickly escalate and spiral into a whole set of barriers. Global growth, which has been enjoying a much better run recently, could be undermined. Of course, the Americans, some in America are saying, actually, we're the ones who are really going to be hurt out of all of this. So I guess now that analysts are saying that stock markets are likely to keep falling, particularly in Asia, right for the rest of the week until we find out what happens Saturday our time to see whether these tariffs come in.
Thanks, Patrick. What happened in our markets? I didn't catch up. Did New Zealand react to this?
Yeah, well, if we did, John, it was completely in contrast to what happened over there. We're actually up quite a healthy 111 points, 1.2%. to 9,054. And of course, as you well know, that New Zealand is not immune to doing the opposite of what the rest of the world is doing initially. Looking at the dollar, has had an effect. We are down below 67 US cents. We're at 66.9. We're at 91.2 against the Australian, and in British pence, 51.
Patrick O'Mara, thank you so much. Patrick joining us live from Wellington. So much feedback coming in from people with their MSD experiences. Here's a short one. There is so much of it. Hi, John. My daughter, solo, in a wheelchair with 4 kids, lost accommodation supplement because she had to borrow from her uncle to finish a minor dwelling change. Thank you. Do keep it up. We're going to get in touch with some of you. Let's go to a really bizarre sports story. Basketball Australia says it's deeply disappointed after an ugly and violent brawl erupted during a high-level match in the Philippines. Players, officials, even fans flooded the court during the Boomers match in Manila. 13 players had to be sent off. The ABC's Thomas Oriti has the story.
It's all happening now. And this has got wild.
They were scenes more reminiscent of a wrestling match.
Control in the Philippines. You are kidding me. This is out of control.
It was Australia's World Cup qualifying game against the Philippines, and the Boomers were cruising to victory. But then, extraordinary scenes on the court, with 4 minutes remaining in the third quarter.
But have a look at these flying punches and kicks.
A chair was thrown and officials spilled onto the court.
Never seen anything like it.
The tension boiled over after Australia's Chris Goulding was elbowed by Roger Ray Pogoy, a player from the Philippines. Boomer Daniel Kickett then retaliated, sparking a wild brawl.
You've been involved in scenes that will go around the world and damage basketball.
The coach of the Philippines has defended his players, accusing Daniel Kickett of provoking them before the game even started. And Basketball Australia has apologised to fans. Chief Executive Anthony Moore.
It was a pretty ugly incident last night. We're incredibly disappointed to be part of it, but our player safety was paramount last night, and after the incident, until the time we actually departed the stadium, our group was in a position where they were fearful for their physical safety. So it was really making sure we had the balance right about following the specific FIBA protocols, but ensuring the safety of our group, once we got to the locker room.
And he's expressed his shock at what unfolded.
Never seen anything like that. I mean, you've got an NBA incident a couple of years ago where players climbed into stands to get into it, but it was ugly, and from a security perspective, we're certainly we'll be working with FIBA to highlight those. There are images online, which I'm sure you've seen on social media, of Nathan Sobey being assaulted by a fan, and then we had a chair being thrown as well by a fan. So, that sort of security is not what we expect, when we actually enter an arena for a competitive match.
Australia ultimately won the game, 89-53, but there were only a few players left on the court at the end. Now Anthony Moore says he's waiting for penalties to be handed down. The International Basketball Federation says it's opening disciplinary proceedings against both teams, and any decisions will be communicated in the coming days.
Thomas Oriti with that report. The Primary Teachers Union is opposing 2 charter schools' bid to join the state system and expressed concern about several others. The Educational Institute says the government should refuse the Villa Education Trust bid to turn its schools in South and West Auckland into designated character schools. All 11 charter schools will have to shut at the end of the year unless they succeed in joining the state system. Our education correspondent, John Gerritsen, filed this report.
The NZEI is opposed to charter schools on principle, but it's only opposing an application from one charter school operator to join the state system, the Villa Education Trust. Elwyn Paul from the Trust says its middle schools in Henderson and Manurewa have been singled out because it's been such a strong advocate of the charter school model.
The NZEI situation is pretty sad. I actually think they've just got to be in their bonnet because we're outspoken, and, we can live with that, and if they're not prepared to face up to challenges, they're not really representing the staff and children of primary schools in New Zealand very well at all.
Elwyn Paul says only 8 local schools made submissions on the school's application, 2 of which he says were supportive, 2 were mixed, and 4 from West Auckland opposed. But Paul Galter from the union says it spoke out against the Villa application only because the schools will make it harder to cope with future role changes at other schools in their local area.
Our concern about the villa application is that the ministry is required to maintain an effective network in the areas where these schools are, and we don't think that the addition of villa schools adds to the ministry's ability to provide that network of schools in those areas.
Paul Galter says in all cases the NZEI's submissions are based on the needs of surrounding schools. In the union's submissions, it told the Education Ministry it does not support 4 of the applications and has concerns or reservations about 3 others, including that of He Puna Marama Trust, which owns 2 Whangarei charter schools. Raewyn Tipene from the Trust says aside from the NZEI's concerns, the opposition the schools faced in their early days has disappeared.
We actually got rung by quite a few of the primary schools who were very happy, and we had 2 of the high schools write in and submit supporting our application, and only 1 objector, and that was from NZEI.
Raewyn Tipene says an influx of families fleeing Auckland's high house and rental prices means there's no longer any concern about the Trust's primary and secondary schools draining students from their neighbours. The schools are expecting a decision on their applications in the next few weeks. Mo te hotaka o te ahi, ko John Gerritsen tēnei.
Coming up next, we're at a soup kitchen and talent quest in Otara. Quite an extraordinary night. But before that, it's showtime for the Court Theatre in Christchurch. After months of delays, it's been named as the priority development for the city's new performing arts precinct. But not everyone is happy, with one theatre producer saying a decision to prioritise a single company in the Anchor project is a big mistake. Logan Church reports from Christchurch.
For the Court Theatre's artistic director, Ross Gumley, today could not come soon enough.
The Performing Arts Precinct is hopefully just that, and the council is still looking forward to a time in the future when we may be able to include other facilities on that, but that is in the future. They've got to start somewhere, and we're just so excited and delighted for Canterbury audiences that they're starting by prioritising a new home for the court.
The Court Theatre relocated in the wake of the 2011 earthquake to Addington, where it's been based in an old grain shed. Ross Gumley says they've made the space work, but it does have problems with leaks and asbestos. And he says it's a win for both the company and Christchurch if it moves into the CBD.
You know, we have been a Canterbury institution. We were the first arts group to restore ourselves after the quake. We get 150,000 people attending shows and classes a year. So this is a future for the Court Theatre, and it's a future for Christchurch audiences and people that want to engage with the arts.
But today's announcement is not music to everyone's ears. The Christchurch City Council has set aside $30 million for its Performing Arts Precinct, and other theatre proposals have been vying for that money. Michael Bell has been working for years on an alternative $19 million multi-purpose performance facility known as the Andromeda. He had the backing of much of Christchurch's art scene and is gutted the council's favouring the court.
We've been fighting for a more equitable art scene, one where the money and attention is shared amongst all of our performing arts groups. I'm obviously gutted for the Christchurch performing arts industry. I think we actually got as close as we've ever been to having some extraordinary change for Christchurch.
Michael Bell says the council should have spread the money equally across the sector.
I don't think that the money should all go into one organisation who then calls the shots for the rest of Christchurch. It doesn't work that way. When we've got a whole lot of different types of people doing a whole lot of different types of theatre for a whole lot of different types of audiences, and they should be able to work on their own terms with the funding shared a bit more equally.
The Christchurch City Council's Development Project Manager, Kim Scott, says it's not the end of the line for other projects for the Performing Arts Precinct. It's just a question of resources.
This has always been envisaged as a staged process. This is not the door shut on Andromeda and similar proposals. We're still very keen to explore those, and it's just unfortunate that our resources don't permit us to do that at this stage.
A working group will be set up over the next few weeks to develop a business case and designs for the new Court Theatre, which had a proposed budget of $45 million and an adjacent car park. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, call Logan Church tēnei.
In breaking news, primary school teachers have voted to strike. Members of the Educational Institute have voted in favour of a 3-hour work stoppage on the afternoon of August 15th and are discussing whether to strike for a full day. We'll be talking to the union just before 6:15. Soup kitchens and food banks have become such a fact of life in New Zealand that we don't report on them much anymore. The Salvation Army alone distributes roughly 30,000 food parcels each year in New Zealand. The Auckland City Mission another 13,000. And on it goes, less noticed now, the poverty business as usual. Except for those whose lives have driven them to soup kitchens and food banks. As Britain's Child Poverty Action Group said, having to ask for food can be humiliating and distressing. In Otara, South Auckland, they've been experimenting with new ways of providing. A trial at OMAC, the Otara Music Arts Centre, has seen a Monday night soup kitchen combined with an open mic talent night. It's been an extraordinary success. The addition of music and of real community talent has transformed something that can be lonely and isolating into a night where people can smile and even dance. Really? Last night, our camera woman, Claire Easton-Farrelly, and I went to take a look. A salad that looks fresh and delicious, marinated chicken drumsticks, multiple shepherd's pies with chickpeas instead of mince, garnished with parsley. And there at the front table, 5 smiling volunteers to serve it all out.
What better atmosphere than this here right now? So they get to have a nice healthy kai, warm kai in there, and enjoy some live music. So it's really awesome.
Welcome to the Otara Music Arts Centre, OMAC, a cultural institution in the city where Monday nights are special, even by the standards of this very special place. Inside they're dancing. Volunteers, a youth group, people who've come to eat, people who've come to feed them. There's something bittersweet about this. The need is sad. The response is wonderful. And music fans with good taste will recognise the guy doing the backing vocals. That's King Kapisi, of course. Caps to the cheeky, Bill Urali to the formal. APRA Silver Scroll winner, genuine Samoan New Zealand hip-hop star, and presider over the music and the microphone at the OMAC Community Kitchen.
Being able to give back to the community is like a huge thing. I'm from a village, I serve the community like a village, and that's the main thing for me, that we can give and serve. It's all about heart, and I try to make sure that if I can, that people can use their heart and learn the true meaning of community is actually just to give, my brother, just to be able to give.
Here, giving begins with a hot meal. It's cold, even in Auckland, and heating costs money. And when rents are high and household incomes are low, something often gives. Food runs out or heaters stay off. The cooks and servers are volunteers. The venue is council-owned and funded. The kai is donated by the local Life Church. The need is deeper and harder to address. Do you think people understand how tough life is for some people in this city?
No, I don't think so. I mean, a lot of people judge others, but they have no idea what it's like here. That's why the people around here, they all understand each other, you know what I mean? That's why we're here.
Normalcy. Poverty doesn't just mean going without, it can mean social exclusion too. Where can you go that doesn't cost you money?
Sometimes families are struggling, and it seems like a great idea to bring the families out and join the rest of us, sharing a kai.
And it's from the heart. It's not about trying to gain status or trying to find or having a hidden agenda. It's all about love. That's what it is. Otara community is pretty awesome. You need to come down and be open-minded and see that there are a lot of caring and awesome, successful people that have come out of Otara as well, like him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brother fellas in the back, sweet singers in the front, cruising down the freeway in the hot, hot sun.
There aren't many South Auckland music stories that don't run through OMAC itself. Perhaps its most famous son, the late Paulie Fuemana of OMC, the O is for Otara, of course, who was even farewelled here. And just last month, the place and its work was honoured with the Special Recognition Award at the 2018 Vodafone Pacific Music Awards.
OMAC is the beating heart of Otara. The people who work, play and create there are the lifeblood. And the music that is made and performed there is the soul of the Otara community, a soul that stretches out all across Auckland. and beyond.
That's Bobby Kennedy, the manager of OMAC, who was there last night, not only to support, but to celebrate the kids on the mic.
Some real talent up there tonight, I thought. A couple of the youngsters were really good.
Well, you know, I don't know why I always get surprised, but this place, without a word of a lie, is heaving with talent, you know. Otara, it's literally, there's something in the water.
You recognize the insufferable rhymes that I provided, to tantalize your mind with, never am I lethargic, I run like a...
Soup Kitchen meets Talent Quest. The band are seasoned regulars, but the kids on the mic are sometimes even doing it for the first time. There's no rehearsals, no written music. The band improvises superbly and the vocalists just join in. This is a youngster called Old Soul. There are brilliant young people here.
What's your name?
My name is Tui.
And Tui, you are the head girl at Papatoetoe High School.
Yes, that's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And what's your name?
My name is Alexandra.
And you are the deputy head girl at Sir Edmund Hillary?
Yep.
And what's your name?
My name is Amin Pulu.
Well, it's so lovely. And are you the head anything anywhere?
No, I wish I was, but we'll leave the leadership to these great young women.
Although leadership is about being there, right? And all three of them, Tui, Alexandra and Amon, were there. A wintry Monday night, showing what community looks like.
Most of the time we're judged by stereotypes on social media. People don't come and look at the good stuff that we have. Yeah. And yeah, I think this is one of the many good things that Suffolk should be known for.
And there's just so much love here, and that's what we want, for the community, especially here in Otara. There's so many families struggling.
What are they struggling with? Is it accommodation costs first and foremost that really cripple the household budget?
Yeah, everything. Everything is finance, everything is, man, the list just goes on and on what's going on around here. I mean, I don't know if anyone knows, but yeah.
The food was good and gratefully received, but more than that, it was an evening of inclusion. As Victoria Taupa'u told me, an understanding that we are all in this together.
There's such a stigma about Otara, but what it comes down to it is that because it's about the heart of the people here, and a lot of those that are outside don't see that.
And whilst this evening is special for the music and the open mic, as Lovey and Cecilia told me, the volunteers and their church group are doing this all over South Auckland.
Monday nights here in Otara, Tuesday nights in Maire, Thursday nights in Papakura Marae, and we're about to open up in Glen Innes in September. So yeah, we're slowly getting there, but it's awesome.
The Students and Youth Council volunteers commandeered the microphone, and you guessed it, they chose the Bill Withers classic. But sometimes that really is all you need, somebody to lean on.
Well, man, that's just how it is, and you know, and if we can't pay to put bread and bare necessities on our tables, we have to have something like this, like the soup kitchen, that, you know, people volunteer, people give a damn, and people give their time to be able to feed, because we have so many people that are homeless, so many people that can't afford just, you know, eat or feed their families. So this, you know, big up the Life Church, big up all the volunteers, big up OMAC, and you know, if we don't do this, who else is going to do it?
King Kapisi, a.k.a. Caps, a.k.a. Bill Urali, ending that piece, which was shot and edited by Claire Easton-Farrelly from OMAC last night. So much feedback coming in on the story that we began the program with tonight, and people are really incensed by it. MSD behaviour in the case you have reported has been outrageous and insulting. There should be punitive damages awarded in compensation, and no amount would be enough. A betrayal of principles of a just society. Says somebody pretty neatly encapsulating what a lot of you are saying. Len, I think, also sums up what you were saying. I know of one person being prosecuted for not declaring income, much of which was from loans, Len says, and then goes on to express a broader theme. The WINS MSD culture of treating their clients as undeserving poor must end now, says Len, and boy, there is an enormous number of texts in agreement with that. Thank you so much for texting us in. We really appreciate hearing from you. 2101 is the text number, of course. Checkpoint at radionz.co.nz is the email. And we are, of course, on Twitter and Facebook. I would rather starve than go to WINZ. They don't know what compassion is, says a text. Coming up, we're going to find out about teachers striking. That will be live after 6, and we're also going to go up for the latest on the kids in the cave, live from Thailand.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, good evening. Ko Katrina Batanaho. A solo mother of 2 children says she's been broken mentally and physically by the Ministry for Social Development, which took her to the High Court, arguing that a bank loan and credit card should be classed as income. The ministry was trying to recover more than $100,000 from the woman. It said it overpaid her while she was earning a benefit between 2005 and 2010 because she borrowed from her mother, a finance company and the bank to stay afloat. She says she was dealing with an abusive ex-boyfriend at the time, but that didn't compare.
When Chip took that abuse to a whole nother level, and no matter what I did, I was met with this sort of tyrannical giant, and that just crushed me. It broke me.
MSD says it's studying the court's decision and considering its response. Primary school teachers have rejected the Education Ministry's pay offer and will strike next month for the first time in 24 years. The Educational Institute says its members voted overwhelmingly for the half-day stoppage in ballots held over the past 2 weeks. Union members will walk off the job between 1:30 and 4:30 on August the 15th. The union has been seeking an immediate 16% pay rise. The ministry has offered increases over 3 years, ranging from 14.7% for newly graduated teachers to 6.1% for teachers at the top of the scale. The woman jailed today for kidnapping a baby had given evidence at the trial of her cousin's killer 3 years before and suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Nadine Manako Tongiavalu told the trial of Vincent Skeen that she'd been in with her cousin when he was stabbed during a Greyland street fight. Today she was sentenced to 3 years after faking documents to get a nanny position before kidnapping the 11-day-old baby the family had trusted her to look after. Judge Nicola Mathers took time off Manako Tongiavalu's sentence for her mental health issues and her early guilty plea, but said the offending could not be tolerated. In a victim impact statement, the mother of the child said Manako Tongiavalu had been trusted by the family and took advantage of that trust. The 12 boys and their football coach found alive deep in a flooded cave complex in northern Thailand after 9 days are to be given 4 months' worth of food and diving lessons. Rescuers say they may be stuck there for some time. The BBC's Howard Johnson is at the cave complex and says they were there to celebrate a birthday which may have helped their survival.
The feeling is that they had a bit of food with them, obviously lots of water, it's free flowing. They were found in a chamber close to an area called Pattaya Beach, a shelf that was raised up above the water, and it looked like in that area there was enough air to breathe through the week. They were obviously relatively dry, they weren't immersed in the water, and when the divers found them they were in relatively good spirits. The idea is that they will not take them out until it's 100% safe to do so. What we're also seeing is that it's raining again here, and the fear is that on Wednesday it's going to become torrential.
Howard Johnson reporting from Chiang Rai. Pressure is mounting on Adelaide's Catholic Archbishop to resign. Philip Wilson has been sentenced to 12 months detention for failing to report repeated abuse by a paedophile priest in New South Wales during the 1970s. He's the most senior Catholic official to be convicted of concealing child sex abuse. An advocate for abuse victims, Peter Gogarty, says he cannot continue in his position.
How on earth can somebody that's been convicted of knowing that children were being abused by a Catholic priest remain the Archbishop of Adelaide? If the Archbishop doesn't resign, I've said it before, the Pope needs to sack him. If the Pope won't do it, the Pope becomes part of a laughingstock.
Peter Gogarty. The Archbishop is expected to serve just 6 months of his sentence and home detention is likely. A Northland share milker who was secretly filmed bashing his cows has lost his job and his home. Footage of the man hitting the animals on the legs with a metal bar went viral last week when the animal rights group Farm Watch released the video to MPI and news media. Lois Williams reports.
The Northland Rural Support Trust says it's now working with the share milker who is devastated. The coordinator, Julie Yonker, says the man's no longer employed at the Mangapai farm and he's had to move out of the house that went with his contract. Mrs Yonker says both the share milker and the farmer are being trolled mercilessly on social media and she believes that's unfair. She says the man's essentially a good person who's made a big mistake and he's acknowledged that and expressed remorse. This is Lois Williams.
It's 6:05. Sport. The last two quarter-final spots will be decided at the Football World Cup in Russia early tomorrow morning. England plays Colombia and Sweden is up against Switzerland. Belgium and Brazil advanced to the top 8 earlier today with wins over Japan and Mexico respectively. The Warriors' National Rugby League campaign has suffered a double blow, with forwards Bunty Afoa and Tohu Harris both ruled out for at least the next month. Afoa suffered a dislocated elbow and Harris a knee injury in the team's loss to Cronulla last round. Prop Adam Blair returns from a one-match suspension for Friday night's game against Penrith. The world women's tennis number one, Simona Halep, heads into Wimbledon with a much more relaxed attitude after picking up her first Grand Slam title. Halep won the French Open last month. The Romanian takes on Kuriki Nara of Japan in her first round match of the All England club tonight, and she says winning a major title has helped her outlook.
The pressure is off. The dream came true, so I don't stress myself anymore with that Grand Slam thing. It's nice to be in this position, but, gives me just happy moments.
Also in action tonight are Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic. And the former US Open golf champion Graham McDowell has withdrawn from a British Open qualifying event this week after Air France lost his clubs. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Nick Bollinger looks back on 50 years of Big Pink in the sampler. The plot thickens and the case continues to unravel in our crime series Gone Fishing. And Leo Shep from the National Poison Centre discusses pee and its residue. Another fine mess we got ourselves into.
And kayaker Scott Donaldson, one man against the ocean, he's made it back.
I definitely did stuff I didn't think I could do, and challenge myself to the max, which is really the point of the thing.
Catch up with those who dare on Lately with me, Karen Hay, 10 p.m. weeknights on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and Taupō, mainly fine. Waikato to Kapiti Coast, including Taumaranui and Taihape, fine, but cloud increasing tomorrow morning. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, a few showers becoming confined to Gisborne and northern Hawke's Bay this evening, fine spells increasing elsewhere. Wellington, Nelson and Marlborough, a few showers in Wellington, clearing this evening, otherwise fine. Buller, Westland and Fiordland, fine. A few light showers developing tonight, then returning to rain in Fiordland tomorrow morning. Canterbury and Otago mainly fine, but high cloud increasing tomorrow and isolated showers developing in Otago. Southland fine today, but rain developing about the coast tomorrow morning and scattered rain developing inland in the afternoon. And the Chatham Islands cloudy periods with a few showers. It's 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina Batten, and thank you everyone for being with us. Joy over the discovery of 12 boys and their football coach deep inside a Thai cave is turning into reality, with the Army now warning they could be trapped for weeks, even months. Navy divers found the group perched on a ledge surrounded by floodwaters about 10k inside the Tamluang cave. They'd been missing for 10 days and were emaciated and hungry. Food and medical kits are being brought in, but officials are saying they either need to learn how to dive and get out in a risky operation or wait for potentially months for the flooding to recede. The BBC's Jonathan Head has been there throughout and he's filed this story.
How many of you? 13. Brilliant.
This was the moment they were found. British cave diver John Valanthan calling out to the missing group in a cave deep under the mountains.
What day? Monday. Okay, but 1 week and Monday. You have been here 10 days. 10 days. You are very strong. Very strong.
As the divers turn to leave, promising to return with backup, one of the boys says to them, "Please tell them we're hungry."
I know, I understand. We come. Okay, we come.
For the families of the boys, a joyous end to 9 agonising days of waiting, hoping, and at times despairing.
Today is the best day. I've been waiting for my son for so many days. I'm so excited. The first thing I will do is hug him.
And for the thousands of volunteers, officials, climbers and others who've taken part in this extraordinary multinational search operation, a very special moment. Most of all for the local governor, who's been the public face of this rescue and ordered officials working on it to think of the boys as their own sons. Narongsak Osotanakon described how the boys were discovered and then said simply, "We found our younger brothers and they were safe." Well, after the jubilation, now the serious challenge of extracting 12 boys and their coach, weakened by hunger, possibly injured, from caves it had taken experienced divers many days to get through. It will be a prolonged operation, but right now this entire country is relishing a happy ending that had become harder and harder to believe in. They were all members of a football squad who'd entered the caves after a Saturday practice with their coach. Their bicycles were found chained to the railings at the entrance. It was presumed they'd been cut off by fast-rising water. The Thai government has thrown everything at this effort to save their lives, now pumping thousands of gallons an hour from the caves to help to get them out. More rain later this week will complicate things, but this astonishing news of the boys' survival will surely spur everyone on.
That was the BBC's Jonathan Head. We're going back to the cave shortly. Anna Corrin from CNN, just discharging her duties for CNN. She'll join us when she's done. But an important local story. After 2 weeks of ballots around the country, primary school teachers and principals have voted to strike. Members of the Educational Institute have voted to stop work for 3 hours, just the 3 hours on August the 15th, and are discussing whether to strike for a full day subsequently. The union was seeking an immediate 16% pay rise for its 28,000 members, arguing the increase was needed to tackle critical teacher shortages. Instead, the ministry offered pay rises spread over 3 years, 14.7% for newly graduated teachers, between 6.5% and 13.7% for teachers with more experience, and 6.1% for teachers at the top of the scale. Liam Rutherford is the NZEI's lead negotiator for the Teachers Collective Contract. He joins us now live on the line from Palmerston North. Liam, are you there?
Hi, John. How are you?
Yeah, good. I guess, first of all, you're not releasing voting numbers. How clear was the margin? How strong a mandate for industrial action have you received?
Oh, it was absolutely overwhelming. It was at levels that we haven't seen it before. And so we know teachers around the country are geared up and ready to go. They're keen to find solutions to these issues.
So can I just clarify that? A high turnout, a high number of your members voting, and a very big margin for action? Yeah, that's right. It was completely one-sided. OK. When will you decide to strike, whether or not you're going to strike for a full day? At the moment, it's 3 hours, isn't it? 1:30 till 4:30 on August 15th. When will you make the decision around a full day?
Yep, so between now and the 15th of August, we're going to be going through a number of processes with members to hear their voice. And as a result, they'll be balloted between now and the 15th of August around whether or not that needs to be extended from a 3-hour work stoppage meeting to a full day. And Liam, what are the key issues here? Is it the offer, the simple pay offer? Is it about the support for children with special needs in the classroom, where there is a very strong sense that there is an inadequacy and under-resourcing of teacher support? Or is it about teacher numbers? What's driving the strength of feeling from your members? So the crisis that we are in is that the country doesn't have enough teachers, and something needs to be done about that immediately. At a time where we have got increasing number of students coming into the system, we're seeing mass reductions on people training to become teachers. We also hear day after day stories of people considering leaving because the pay and the workload just doesn't lead to any type of work-life balance. And for me, the real defining voice that we're hearing is that teachers are no longer ambassadors for other people to become teachers. And I think if we're at that point, it's a real shame.
Can you explain that for me? So what did you mean by that point?
So for the longest of time, the people that would encourage other people to become teachers are teachers. And now teachers more often than not would actually ward somebody off becoming a teacher because it's just not worth the workload.
Right. Can we look then at the difference between what the ministry is offering you and what you are asking for? It's closest with the newly graduated teachers, isn't it? So 14.7% for newly graduated teachers is the offer, 16% is what you're asking for, and then it falls away the further that we get up the pay scale. So are you close to the ministry anywhere?
No, I mean, the offer in terms of the percentages as a whole is a little bit of smoke and mirrors. The reality is that 86% of teachers have been offered 6.1% over 3 years.
We've just got a statement from the Ministry of Education that says it's disappointed, obviously, that you've rejected their offer. Its Deputy Secretary Early Learning and Student Achievement, Alan McGregor-Reid, says the Ministry's negotiations with the NZEI will continue in the coming weeks. And she says the Ministry is disappointed escalated strike action is being discussed while negotiations are ongoing. Are the Ministry up against it? If you think that every 1% increase in teacher pay costs the government about $40 million per annum, is this a lot of money that's being discussed? Too much money?
No, and I think it's less about the money and more about what we're going to choose to prioritise. I mean, if parents in this country value having a teacher in front of their kids, then we actually need immediate action around the teacher crisis that we're currently in.
Are you finding it difficult? Is the industry, is the ministry, are schools finding it difficult to recruit teachers?
Oh, hugely. And the teacher shortage looks different around the country, but principal after principal is reporting back their own unique stories of how difficult it is to find enough people to apply for jobs or anybody to apply for jobs. And when you listen to the teachers thinking about leaving the profession, you can kind of see why.
Liam, one final question. What do you think the chances are of you voting for a full-day strike? Given the numbers, given the mandate for the 3-hour action, they would seem strong?
I think we're at a point where we are definitely listening to the members, but the sense of the meetings was it did come across really strong that they thought a full-day strike is what we needed up front.
Liam Rutherford, who is the NZEI's lead negotiator, joining us live from Palmerston North. Thank you. Liam, we're going to go back to Thailand shortly, where CNN are giving us a correspondent live from the scene. But let's go to Australia. Pressure is mounting on Adelaide's Catholic Archbishop to resign. Philip Wilson has been sentenced to 12 months detention for failing to report repeated abuse by a paedophile priest in New South Wales during the 70s. The 67-year-old is the most senior Catholic official to be convicted of concealing child sex abuse. The BBC's Sydney correspondent Howell Griffiths reports.
Will you now resign?
Refusing to repent, Philip Wilson stayed silent as he arrived at court. Appointed by the Pope, he has so far clung on to his title as Archbishop of Adelaide while stepping aside from his duties. He broke the law in 2004 by refusing to report child abuse disclosed to him decades ago. His 12-month detention order means he won't go to jail. He may have to wear an electronic tag instead. But abuse survivors want him sacked.
How on earth can somebody that's been convicted of knowing that children were being abused by a Catholic priest remain the Archbishop of Adelaide?
Peter Cray was a 10-year-old altar boy when he was sexually abused. The priest at his church, James Fletcher, told him he needed to be punished. A few years later, Peter confided in Philip Wilson, telling him exactly what had happened. But the Archbishop did nothing, and the priest was able to abuse again.
And I hit rock bottom, knowing that the guilt that I carried and so forth, if I had persevered with Wilson, or if Wilson had done something, then that poor boy may not have been abused.
Because the abuser could have been stopped.
It could have been
if
stopped.
Father Wilson had acted.
Yes, definitely, yes.
The Catholic Church has been accused of systematically concealing abuse around the world. In Chile, all 33 bishops have offered to quit after accusations of a cover-up. So far, the Pope has accepted 3 resignations. The court heard that Wilson had refused to come forward because of his unflinching loyalty to the Catholic Church. He'd shown no contrition. Failing to report abuse is an offence in this part of Australia, but in many parts of the world, it's not against the law. Wilson was able to walk from court. The Catholic Church has said it now wants to support abuse survivors, but it has so far refused to condemn one of its own.
That was Harold Griffith with that report. 6:20. A regional stoush is developing over Nauru's decision to ban Australians' public broadcaster, the ABC, of course, from the Pacific Islands Forum in September. The Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull is one of the leaders attending. Yesterday, the Nauru government said it would not issue visas to any ABC representative, accusing the broadcaster of bias and not showing respect to its president. Now there are calls for other media to boycott the event in solidarity with ABC. Here's the ABC's Melissa Clark.
Every year, leaders from 18 Pacific Island nations gather for the Pacific Islands Forum, and this year it's Nauru's turn to host the event in September. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull will be among the leaders attending. Only 3 representatives from Australian media outlets will be able to attend, given the limited infrastructure and accommodation on Nauru. So, the media outlets coordinated to send 1 person from the ABC and 2 from Wires Service AAP to attend on behalf of all Australian media. But in a statement, the Nauru government has said it won't allow that.
It should be noted that no representative from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation will be granted a visa to enter Nauru under any circumstances, due to this organisation's blatant interference in Nauru's domestic politics prior to the 2016 election.
It continues to list further criticisms of the ABC.
Harassment of and lack of respect towards our president in Australia, false and defamatory allegations against members of our government, and continued biased and false reporting about our country.
The Nauru government has previously complained about stories broadcast on the ABC airing allegations of corruption by President Barrenwanga and Justice Minister David Adiang, and reporting on the island's asylum seeker processing. The ABC's Director of News, Gavin Morris, has released a statement describing the ban as an outrageous restriction on press freedom. He defended the ABC's independent reporting in the region and said the broadcaster won't be giving up the position. Just last week, the Pacific Islands Forum Secretary-General Meg Taylor was reassuring Australia that Nauru would not prevent journalists reporting. She's speaking here on The World, an ABC television program broadcast across the Asia Pacific.
I am confident that it will be a successful forum. There will be differences because it's in Nauru. We do have issues that journalists are concerned about that they want to get in, but that has been opened up now.
The ABC's outrage at being excluded is shared by other Australian media.
I think it's a terrible decision.
David Crowe is a Fairfax journalist and is the president of the Federal Parliamentary Press Gallery. He says Nauru should reconsider this decision.
They've tried to set up this, or they've tried to host this international forum, and they're, I think, sacrificing the integrity of their own forum by conducting the media rules in this way to exclude the Australian public broadcaster.
David Crowe, the president of the Australian Parliamentary Press Gallery, ending Melissa Clark's report, and at least one media outlet is now refusing to attend. Dan McGarry from Vanuatu's Daily Post newspaper says he will boycott the event because Nauru is in clear breach of media rights and freedoms. The chair of New Zealand's Press Gallery, Stacey Kirk, says Nauru's decision is a clear violation of the right to freedom of expression and follows already restrictive reporting conditions for the summit. Boy, oh boy, with the time at 23 minutes and a bit, almost 24 minutes past 6, there is so much feedback coming in on MSD and the pursuit of a solo mother who had been in receipt of a benefit for money she had received in the form of loans from her bank, on her credit card and from her family, all of which were repayable but MSD were classing as income. She has been successful in the High Court today after a battle that lasted, somewhere in excess of 8 years, and people are incensed by this. What were MSD thinking? Debt has never been an asset or an income. It is broken thinking. There needs to be compensation and interest on loss of earnings for beneficiaries penalised for having debt, says Peter B. from Porirua. John, I'm theoretically well-resourced with a law degree and a small mortgage, but I'd sooner struggle along on my own without a job rather than endure the assault on my mental health that engaging with wins can entail, says Bruce, and so much more along those lines. Well, let's change the subject entirely. Upon the dawn of Matariki, a new generation of kapahaka experts have gathered in Palmerston North to battle it out at the National Secondary Schools competition. After hours and hours of practice, hundreds of young students have finally got their moment to shine on stage. Tumane Korehi reporter Te Aniwa Huri Hanganui is there.
It was a grey day in Palmerston North today, but on stage in front of hundreds of people, Aotearoa's emerging young stars came alive. 41 teams, each with up to 40 performers, are fighting for a spot in the top 9. Napier Girls High School have never won the competition, but this year its leader, Ariel Munro, was determined to leave a lasting impression.
This is kahungunu, like we want to show a different side and who Napier Girls, and we want to represent Aotearoa to the best of our ability.
Aropu from Opotiki College practiced most weekdays and every weekend leading up to the competition. Ngārangi Kamaya Te Ruatarehu Stewart says performing for her people makes it all worth it.
The people, obviously, they're my whānau. They're the reason I come back every weekend to sweat, to cry, to bleed. Blood, sweat and tears, or for the iwi, or for the kaupapa.
The secondary schools competition is just as competitive as Te Matatini, with 43 judges deciding who stays and who goes. Every time a group drops a poi or goes over the 25-minute mark, they lose points. But while the competition is tough and standards are high, for performers like Hika Tangata Alice, there's far more to this than competing.
For me, it's a thing of gaining knowledge, gaining friendship, gaining our family. It's good. And we drive each other.
Ngārangi Kamaya Te Ruatarehu Stewart was proud to stand on stage today, not just as a competitor, but as a young wahine Māori celebrating her culture.
Kapa haka isn't all about haka, it's about whānau and coming together and being able to embrace our culture, because we've got a beautiful culture, and especially doing it with the people you love.
The top 3 groups every day until Thursday will advance to the finals at the end of the week. Ki Papaioia mo te hōtako te ahi pōnei, ko te aniwa, huri hanganui aho.
6:27. Let's return quickly before the end of the program to Thailand, where CNN correspondent Anna Corin is joining us live from outside the Tam Luang cave in the northern province of Chiang Rai. Anna, I can't even begin to imagine how busy you are and how many live crosses you have done, so we really appreciate you joining us. But when are these...
You're very welcome.
Thank you. When are these kids going to get out?
Well, that's a very good question, John. We just don't know. The chief of the Thai Navy SEALs just spoke and said that he's got dive members with the kids as we speak, providing them with support. They're discussing the options, such as, whether they're going to have to scuba dive out of there, all 13 members, these 12 kids and their 25-year-old coach. But look, at this stage, it is really just assessing the situation. They've said, give us 48 hours. We need to look at the overall health of these children, make sure that they're all in good condition. From all reports, they are. They're strong. One of them told a diver, can we get out today? That is how anxious, how excited these kids are to have been found and wanting so desperately to be reunited with their family. But it is going to be a logistical challenge. There is no doubt about it. It has taken professional divers days to get there, and they are battling floodwaters within this labyrinth of a cave system. And even though they now know the route, it's some 4.5 kilometres from the entrance of the cave. They were found actually another 400 metres in from where they thought these boys had taken refuge, and we understand that the waters had been rising, so they moved further into the cave system and found an even more elevated spot to seek refuge and sit out the last 10 days. But it is just an incredible story. We understand that they've only suffered some light injuries, such as a rash. Otherwise, they're eating. They're first off consuming these sort of power gels, protein gels. But there's also been orders of sticky rice and pork and milk. So clearly they have an appetite, which is completely understandable.
Anna Corrin, thank you so much for joining us live. We really appreciate it. Anna Corrin, who was there for CNN, of course, and those CNN correspondents, they just stand there and they just do live shot after live shot and live cross after live cross for hours on end, managing to sound interested and engaged all the time, as she did with us then. Quite an extraordinary story. They have been found, they are safe, but those caves are long, flooded and tight, and getting them out will be the next triumph. Thank you for being with us. That's Checkpoint for tonight. We hope to see you again tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The woman who's just won a High Court case over her bank loans being classed as income has described the Social Development Ministry as a tyrannical giant. Primary school teachers will strike for a half a day next month after voting to reject the Education Ministry's pay offer.